So I want to talk a lot about the Solomon Foundation. I want to talk about being creative, but I also went back to my room last night, and I think I even heard a couple of other speakers say, gosh, after Jerry spoke, man, I really need to up my game. I really need to change my presentation. So that's a good thing that Jerry started us off last night and challenged us to the next step. I want to first talk about the Solomon Foundation. And really, I think where we're at in our ministry right now is our goal is turning vision into reality. Turning vision into reality. Let me give you an example of that. We've helped over 240 churches make this huge transition, and the vast majority of those churches never had a building. Okay? So let me just show of hands. The churches represented here that got into their first building through a partnership with the Solomon Foundation. Raise them high. Okay? I think that tells everybody in this room what we're all about. All right? I tell pastors and churches, executive pastors all the time, if you want me to be your banker, I have no interest. If you want me to be your ministry partner, let's go get it done. All right? And again, I come from the banking world. All right? That's where I cut my teeth before God put me in the position to be able to help churches finance buildings and build facilities and acquire properties all over the country. So I know how a banker thinks. All right? And so the bottom line is, what we want to do at the Solomon Foundation is turn vision into reality. So let me just kind of give you a background. Most of you know this, but the Solomon Foundation story, and I put the word story on there. I added that to my presentation last night. Why? Okay? I added that because it's a story. It's an amazing story of what God's done through this ministry. Founded in December of 2010. We opened in April 2011. Obviously, we're headquartered here in the Denver area, on the south side of Denver in Parker, Colorado. We are the fastest growing church extension fund of all 50 funds in America ever. Okay? And one thing I want to preface, many of you that have heard me speak before, I want to preface this. When I talk about financials and numbers, that's not a reflection on the Solomon Foundation. It's a reflection on the Restoration Movement Christian Church. Okay? Because here's the deal. My job is to keep up with you. All right? When I travel across the country and meet with churches, my job is to help facilitate you and your vision. And I can tell you this. The thing that excites me the most every day when I get up is, where is the next visionary I'm going to be able to come alongside? And it's amazing that God brings us those churches and those ministries almost every day. Okay? So that's what excites me is what's happening in our movement. So we're now the 6th largest fund in the United States out of 50, and we'll be the 4th largest probably by the end of this year. We've grown to almost $550 million in total assets in less than 8 years. Now, let me give you, and again, this reflects on the Restoration Movement Christian Church. The 5 larger funds than the Solomon Foundation have total assets of $4.8 billion with a B. Okay? The Solomon Foundation grew more in 2017 than those 5 funds combined. Why is that? What are those funds? Well, unfortunately, it's the Methodists and the Presbyterians and the Lutherans, and what's happening to their denominations. They're going down. Okay? What's happened to the Restoration Movement? It's going up. So again, that's just a reflection. All of this growth is really a reflection on all of you and the great ministry that's happening. We serve churches all across the United States and Eastern Europe. We have a loan with a church in Warsaw. We currently have over 4,800 investors, about 7,000 accounts in all 50 states. We've granted over $8 million back to churches. How many of you in this room as a church have gotten a grant from the Solomon Foundation? Okay. We do that every year. Why do we grant money back? Well, number one, we tithe on our spread, and we tithe on all the gifts that are given to us. People ask me, well, why do you do that? It's biblical. Okay? We're going to tithe back what God's people give to us. All right? We currently have about 240 church loans in 41 states plus Warsaw. We've opened 29 projects in 2018. Now let me put that in perspective. That means there was a new Solomon Foundation project opening every other Sunday last year. Okay? And we have over 35 projects in process as we sit here today. Okay? So we have two guys, Bill Shalkowski, Tom Vick, our construction team. They're on the road every week because they're inspecting properties, they're helping churches get their facilities open, and they're out there every week because you can imagine what it's like to manage 35 projects at one time. And that doesn't include the ones that are coming to us and saying, hey, can you help us to the next step? How do we get that done? All right? It's probably about 45, 50 projects that they're managing all the time. Those 240 churches had 65,000 people in them the day we closed their loan. Okay, and again, all 240 over time has happened throughout that progress of time. Today, those same 240 churches have 130,000 people attending every week. Therefore, with a partnership with the Solomon Foundation, there's 65,000 people every Sunday in church more than when they started the process. Okay? And again, some of those are still under construction. Some of those haven't even moved in their buildings. All right? But here's the number that motivates our team every day when we get up and go to work. 18,000 people have been baptized in those 240 churches. Okay? And I'll talk about this in a minute, but I want to ask you a question. How many financial institutions in America track baptisms? All right? We'll talk more about that subject. The non-instrumental Church of Christ. This has been really dear to my heart. And really, I think I know our board has embraced this whole project. But what we did about 5 years ago is we made a commitment to fund 10% of our total assets into the non-instrumental African American Church of Christ. All right? And the issue that happened there is that commitment grew because what? Our total assets grew. And so that commitment was always running forward to being a bigger number. But then we had a board meeting and we decided to bump the 10% to 20%. Okay? And then we continue to grow, so all of a sudden we have the ability to help more churches in this group. We currently have 37 projects that we've funded with the non-instrumental Church of Christ. We had an $80 million commitment. That commitment actually could be raised just by our total assets now. We haven't done that yet, but $69 million funded. We funded $69 million of that $80 million commitment. And of course, the key church that we funded in America was the Renaissance Church of Christ in Atlanta, formerly West End Church of Christ. Now, let me tell you a story about West End. I got this call from their pastor, Dr. Orpheus Hayward. He's become a very close friend of mine. And he said, hey, we heard about the Solomon Foundation. You know, we're a non-instrumental Church of Christ. We're based in Atlanta. We'd really like you to come and help us. I said, sure. So we made an appointment. I flew to Atlanta. And I sat down with this group of men. Some of the most godly men I've ever met in my life. some of the most educated men I've ever met in my life. Okay? And I listened to their story. Okay? They had $1 million in the bank. Okay, so put that in perspective out there. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but there's not a lot of churches here that have $1 million in the bank. Okay? They owned a $2.2 million building with no debt. Oh, by the way, they'd gone to the outskirts of 285, the loop around Atlanta off Camp Creek Parkway, and they bought a 20-acre site. And oh, by the way, they paid all cash. So they got a property free and clear on the outskirts of the belt. They've got a property that they, by the way, every Sunday they were turning away 40 cars every Sunday, every service, because they had no parking. Okay, and they own that building free and clear, and they had this money in the bank, and there's no bank in America that would loan them a penny. Okay, now I'm not going to get into the reasons of that. I have my own philosophy, but the bottom line is we stepped to the plate. And that opened the floodgates for us to be able to work with this whole group of churches, but the first one that really helped us open that door, there was a couple of others, but that one was the one to be the key catalyst to open up this whole area. So West End renamed themselves Renaissance because guess what? They were no longer on the west end of downtown Atlanta, all right? And they made this huge move, and there's their new building, 78,000 square feet. Plenty of parking, it looks like, and I'm going to tell you a story in a minute, okay? Because they moved in their building here about 5 weeks ago, and they had about 2,200 people show up. They're running about 1,400. They made the fatal mistake of not adding a second service, and guess what problem they had the day they moved in? Parking, okay? So obviously now they've gone to 2 services for a reason. And it's a wonderful congregation, a wonderful church. And this next picture I'm going to show you, I want you to study the faces on this picture because it tells the story. Okay? That's when they cut their ribbon, the day they opened. That's Dr. Orpheus Hayward right in front. A great man of God. That's several of the elders behind there. Great men. And I think this church could be a church of 3,000 to 4,000 very quickly, all because of a partnership, a ministry partnership. Yes, there's a financial arrangement to that, but it's a ministry partnership. And for us, that's what excites us right there is that picture, because we can see the excitement in the congregation. Let me just kind of update you on a couple of other projects. One of the key things all of you, I think, are aware of in the room is I am the big box junkie in America, okay? I love big boxes, all right? And we can talk more about that, but I don't want to take up my valuable time this morning. This is a church that just opened in the suburbs of Chicago, Bloomingdale. Of course, we all know what came out of Bloomingdale, right? This was a former Lazy Boy furniture store, 55,000 square feet, across from the mall in Bloomingdale, very exclusive neighborhood of Chicago. And oh, by the way, the entire mall is closed. Not just a few stores, all the anchors, everything in it. Whole mall is empty. Okay? We actually tried to buy the Macy's before we bought the Lazy Boy, but we couldn't get that done. So we got this, and this church moved in just recently, and they exploded in growth from 900 at the high school, okay, 242, you'll kind of appreciate this, 900 at the high school, and they haven't looked back on 2,100, okay? Great story, great church, doing a great job in suburban Chicago. Now, this is one of my favorite stories for multiple reasons. But this is a hinky-dinky, all right? Okay, there's a couple Nebraska people. You know what a hinky-dinky is, right, Gary? All right, so this is a classic story because we wanted to try to figure out what day that grocery store opened. I had a little inside track because this is where my mother-in-law and her family did their grocery shopping. All right? So we showed this, Julie and I showed this to her mother, and she looked around there and immediately she said 1957. Okay? Then we showed it to her aunt and uncle, and the first thing they did was try to find their car. Okay? But that was a hinky-dinky that opened in approximately 1957 on the northeast side of Lincoln, Nebraska. All right? Today, that's what the hinky-dinky looks like. Okay? State-of-the-art facility, 30,000 square feet completed. We made the loan to Cross the Line Christian Church in Lincoln, Nebraska when they were 6 months old. Running maybe 200 people, maybe 150. Okay, but we saw this unique opportunity. Of course, that's what it looks like today, state-of-the-art worship. And this church is running 550 people every Sunday. It's now, I think, the third or fourth largest Christian church in the state of Nebraska. And it's got all kinds of room to grow. Great project for us, great partnership. This is Ecclesia. Wilsons are here, raise your hand. This is a great project for the Solomon Foundation too. I remember getting a call that, hey, Doug, you need to come to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I thought, okay, I'll be there. We set the date, flew in there. And the church had bought this beautiful piece of property. I think there's like a couple 100,000 cars that drive by it every day. Okay, perfect site between Conway and Myrtle Beach. And what you find out in Myrtle Beach is where all the hotels are, but all the people that work in the hotels live in Conway. Okay? So this is right between. And the cool thing was, the senior pastor, Matt Wilson, said to me, yeah, we've got others that want to help us build our 12,000 square foot building. And I said to myself, why would you want to build a 12,000 square foot building when you're running 240 people already? Because what happens if you move into a 12,000 square foot building and you're running 240? You outgrew it the day you moved in. Okay? So we got creative. We found some ways to help this church. And so they built a 30,000 square foot facility, recently opened. And they're averaging about 600 to 650 people every Sunday. But here's the cool story about Ecclesia, is this church is just recently opened, but when it was under construction, late fall, early winter, guess what happened in Myrtle Beach? Anybody want to guess? Wilsons, you can't guess because you live there. Hurricane. Okay? I remember Matt Wilson calling me and going, you know, Doug, our contractor says we need to raise our building pad like 12 inches and it costs 40 grand. I said, well, let's let our construction guys figure that out. And if it needs to be done, let's do it. So we figured out we needed to raise the pad 12 inches. Anybody want to guess what was the driest spot in this whole area during the hurricane? This site. But you know what that led to? This became FEMA's headquarters, and 3,500 people were fed on this site for at least 25 days. Okay, talk about marketing and outreach. That's a freebie, isn't it? And Ecclesias, they're doing a great job. Love the Wilson family and everything. If you want to like them on Facebook, guarantee you'll get a post every 30 seconds. Okay, but that's just how energetic they are. And in fact, this morning, if you saw our big thing, it's in the other room. You saw Matt and Tina. That's they're on our ad. Brandon.
Hey, can I give you an update?
Yeah.
This past Thursday was our first Thursday service, midweek service, and it helped us to accomplish And this has been a consistent growth through discipleship and baptisms, but this past week our attendance was over 900.
Wow, I'm outdated here. Great, fantastic. And I know Cross the Line is starting a Thursday night service here coming up in the next couple weeks. Of course, this is Mountain View. Most of you, or all of you, had the privilege of hearing their worship team. This is again out in the middle of east side of Denver. It's probably closer to Kansas than it is downtown Denver. Growing community out in the middle of nowhere. They've been at the high school for, I think, 10 years, running maybe 300 people. We helped them build this metal building out in the middle of nowhere, and they're running 550 to 650 on an average week. Seeing tremendous growth. That's our senior pastor, Don Headley. Of course, this is a newer project. We've got some folks here from the refinery. This is in suburban Phoenix. This is called the Refinery Christian Church. And they just built this new building, and you can see the freeway signs there. This is right on the new 303 loop around Phoenix. Major freeway end. I don't know how many gazillion cars drive by there a day. And they just put their sign up. The banner's kind of sign on the other side. And they're running about 500 in a leased facility. And they've moved in this building, and they haven't looked back at 1,200 people every Sunday. 1,300 is pretty much the average. They moved in right before Christmas. And it's a great piece of property. A great location in the greater Phoenix area, and they're just seeing explosive growth. Okay? Southern Hills. We've got several guys here from Southern Hills. This is in a quasi-suburb of Atlanta called Carrollton, Georgia. Unique project, and you're going to hear more about that from Bill later this afternoon, so I won't steal any of his thunder, but fantastic project that no one else would touch. No one else would touch this project. Now, here's the thing, I'll guarantee you this. Every project that I've showed you on here, every project, there's lenders going to be pounding on their door because now they want to finance them. Why? The risk is gone. Okay? Our goal at the Solomon Foundation is we need to keep our customers and our partners. But that seems to be the trend, all right? And of course, North Warsaw Christian Fellowship, a couple of guys here came all the way from Warsaw. This is one of my favorite churches, and I'm not just saying that because my good friends are here. The first time I went to Warsaw 5 years ago and saw what they were doing was absolutely amazing. So let me put this in perspective. 38 million people in Poland. 0.1% are evangelical Christians. 40,000 out of a country of 38 million. Now, it's a vast majority Catholic, but the bottom line is the outreach and the potential that this church has is incredible. So they had the chance to buy a 60,000 square foot closed university. Okay? All done. Finished, and didn't have to hardly put any money inside. And saw instant growth, and they run right at about 1,200 on this campus every weekend. But they've planted 3 more churches around Warsaw, and those churches run over 600 every week. They partnered with 242 to plant a church in West Warsaw. And they're just doing a phenomenal job. So when you look at a church running 1,200 in this location, I compare it to a church of running 10,000 in America. That's how much impact they're having. Now the cool thing is, for me, the first couple, I've been there 4 times since we partnered with them. And the first couple times there, I didn't really have an interpreter. You know, all the worship songs are the same ones we sing, except all the words are X, Y's, and Z's, okay? And it's a beautiful thing to see. But the last couple times I've been there, well, this last time I was there in January. So when I go to service there, they give me a headset, and there's a guy sitting in a box back in the back of the worship center, and I'm hearing everything in English. So now I can sing the songs. Now I can hear the message. So at 9 o'clock, they do that because they have a lot of people that come that speak English but not Polish. So you can worship in that. The cool thing, though, is at 11 o'clock service, they flip that around, and they have a lot of people that speak Russian. Okay? And so they do the translation from Polish to Russian. Okay? The other thing that's happening in this area of the world is Poland has just accepted 3 million people from Ukraine. Why? Because of the invasion of Russia into the Crimea. That's forcing people to come across the border. And Poland has not been a country that has opened their borders like other European countries. They were select, but they opened up to their friends to the east. And so there's 3 million people coming in from the Ukraine. So Saturday nights at this facility, they have a Ukrainian service. Okay? Because here's the other thing that's cool, is they were smart enough to realize that because in Ukraine, 23% of the population is evangelical. So here these people are coming across the border, let's open up a service for them and let's help accommodate them too. Okay? And that's not in that 1,200 number, that's above and beyond. But that just shares just the heart that this church has. And, I hope that before you leave here today and tomorrow, that you get the chance to talk to these guys, because it's a phenomenal ministry in a very, very difficult area. Okay? Because as Jerry said last night, what happened in 1987 through the speech of a president of the United States that said, I'm the president and I'm going to put these words in my speech, translated to 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. Okay? And we all know what's happened. These two men lived in a communist country. They know what it was like. And now what's happened is the freedom that's happened in these countries. And the strongest economy of all the European countries is what country? Poland. Okay? It's a dynamic thing that's going on there economically. Many of you have seen this. That shows the green dots are where our investors are. The bars are where the loans are. You can see plenty of diversity in our portfolio. Of course, this is our staff. We couldn't do what we do without this great group of people. We've added probably, since this picture was taken, another 4 or 5 new staff members. We've just been growing like crazy and added great people to our staff. Of course, we couldn't do what we do without these men. Okay? Several in the room here, Graydon, Jerry, Mike, Alan. Jerry's not in this picture because he just rotated off. All right? But Jerry served 8 years on our board. And Bob Smith's over there too. He's hiding on me. Hey, Bob. Bob Smith on the left, Andy Hansen, Charlie Alcott, Dennis Bratton, Barry Cameron, Alan Stein, Darrell Land, Graydon Jessup, Don Wilson, Mike Nave. Wouldn't you love to have these guys on your board? Okay? Great group of men. One new thing that we're just launching I wanted to just share with all of you is what you've seen from the Solomon Foundation in our 8-year history is this movement to help churches that nobody else will help. Then you've seen an organization that's helping the African American non-instrumental Church of Christ. The next segment we feel that's underserved in America is the rural church. 5,500 Christian churches in America. Jerry helped me with this number. I would say 5,000 or 4,500 of them are in rural America. Okay? Nobody wants to work with them. So we just started our Rural Church Initiative. We just launched this initiative at the Center for Church Leadership in Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. And then we're actually launching it in several state meetings because the states of Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, they're doing rural church conferences. So this last weekend I was in Grand Island, Nebraska, where I spoke at the Nebraska Rural Church Conference. Okay? Many of these churches are 15, 20, 40, 50 people. Okay? And they're in older facilities. So we've launched our Rural Church Initiative, where most lenders or church extension funds will not loan to the rural churches. The vast majority of our churches are small, rural churches, like I said. And so we've launched our Renovate program, where a rural church in America can come to the Solomon Foundation through a short loan application. We will give them up to $200,000 unsecured loan. Okay? Now, why would we give unsecured loans to these churches? Because these people will pay back their loans very, very quickly. The other part of that equation is the vast majority of these churches have lots of cash reserves that we can put to work. Okay? And so these types of loans will let them put in new carpet, new paint, upgrade their parking lots, put in a new sign, and do the things that most lenders aren't really interested in being involved in. But we think it's important to now help the rural church in America. Okay? So, investments. Most of you know what drives the Solomon Foundation. Well, we have to raise this capital over here so we can pool that capital together to make the loans that we originate. Okay? We can't do anything without the investor. All right? Many of you are investors in here, and we've just seen a phenomenal, another big spike in deposits where we're raising approximately 15, 16, 17 million. The first 2 months of this year, we raised $36 million in new deposits. Now we have withdrawals and other things that come out of that, but we feel that we're going to be on this trend to probably raise $180 million gross, $120 million net, to go out and fund churches across America for $120 million this year. So how can I be part of that? Well, it's pretty simple. We offer the simple products. The brochures are on your table and in your packet. But we offer a demand account, 6-month, 1-year, 3-year, and 5-year certificate of deposit. Okay, just like you'd get at the bank. All right, except our rates are a lot better. Okay, amen. Right? And we're going to talk about why we do that too. We do IRA rollovers, we do custodial accounts, we also do 403Bs. So let me ask the churches in this room, because I think there's several. How many churches in this room have a 403B with the Solomon Foundation? Excellent. If you don't, you should get one. Okay? So join us. We want you to be part of this organization. And one thing I want you to know, when you become an investor at the Solomon Foundation, you're part of a family. You're part of a group of people that enjoy being around each other and enjoy watching this kingdom grow. I'll tell you a quick story. When we first started, we were about a year into the Solomon Foundation, and Russell Johnson, who works for us, called me and said, hey, there's a church in Kentucky, and they've got $250,000 in reserves, and they want to move it to the Solomon Foundation. Okay, and in those days, hey, that was a big deposit. So I flew to Louisville. Russell picked me up. We drove down there. We picked up the guy, and we went to lunch. And we're driving to lunch, and the guy said, man, I hate to tell you this, but moving money, he says, I'm the treasurer, but moving money out of this church is like moving it out of Fort Knox. And I'm thinking to myself, and I just flew all the way to Louisville to hear that. But we took him to lunch. We told him the Solomon Foundation story. And we were driving back to his office, pulled in the parking lot. He said, can you come in my office for a minute? I go, sure. So we went in his office. And the door wasn't even hardly closed. And he said, how much will you give me for $500,000? He says, for me personally. And I gave him a rate. And he says, how about $1 million? I told him the rate. The next day, he wired us $1.2 million. Okay? Fast forward a couple years after that. We're at a meeting in Phoenix, and he came up to me and he said, Doug, I finally get it. I finally get it. It's not about the interest you're paying me. It's about the impact of the money that's going into the kingdom. You could pay me $0 and I'd still invest money at the Solomon Foundation. Now, I didn't say, okay, we're going to adjust your rate tomorrow. Absolutely not. I said, absolutely. You know, that's what it's all about. He's now our third largest investor on a personal basis, and he's got about $6 million invested with the Solomon Foundation. And I know he uses a lot of that interest that he earns to do what? Help ministry. Okay? Help ministry. I wanted to shift gears a little bit here, and I want to talk about this subject because you all know that if you need help from the Solomon Foundation and how we get creative and do that, all it takes is a phone call to us and we'll be there. All right? So that's the answer. How do we do creative financing? Call us. We'll tell you how. Okay? But the bottom line, one of the things that I'm seeing across the country is this whole phenomenon of mission drift. How many have heard that phrase, mission drift? How many have read the book, Mission Drift? We're going to talk about that. We made our entire staff read it, okay? Because it was that important to me. So developing a mission statement and core values, I think, is critical to keeping an organization on track, all right? And for us, that's meant a lot in our history, okay? So let me just share with you very quickly, and all of you, most of you know what these are, but our first core value at the Solomon Foundation is we want to honor God. Everything that we do, we want to honor God. Now, at times we don't do that. We are human. But we want to try to honor God in everything we do in our organization every day. Secondly is we want to help people come to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Now, in your pamphlet is the actual core values with the Bible verse and the Bible verse spelled out. All right? Okay? Because that's critical for you to know the history behind this also. So we want to help people come to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That's why we count baptisms. Okay? It's important. So now we're down to the third core value before we even talk about money. And we're a financial institution. Okay? And our third core value is we want to help our investor get a great return on their investment. Meaning we love to pay you good rates. You don't find that anywhere else in the market. Why? We need you to invest with us so we can help more churches get built. All right? Number 4, we want to help churches get to the next step. That's an important part of our process too, in coming alongside the church and building these facilities. And of course, we want to have fun. All right? People ask me all the time, where in the world did you get that one? True story. We were interviewing audit firms, and I got a brochure from an audit firm, and one of their core values was to have fun. And I said to myself, if auditors can have fun, I can. Okay? True story. Now, the cool thing about all of this is this was the devotion by Barry Cameron at the first board meeting of the Solomon Foundation. And it was so moving to us in the room, we adopted these as our core value like that. Core values like that. And we built on that, okay? You know, we joke, yeah, our 6th core value is to enjoy food, eat more food. But that's joking aside. These are the core tenets of the Solomon Foundation. Now, how do we carry those out and how do we manage those? When we have a staff meeting, we go through our core values. Why? Because it's important that our staff continues to know who we are. It doesn't get redundant. It gets kind of exciting because several of the meetings, what we do is we actually ask our staff in a meeting to say, tell us an example of that core value. We want to hear a story, right? And we usually have to cut it off because guess what? There's so many stories. All right? It's important to make sure that their staff buys in to what you're doing. We also hold each other accountable for these core values. It's important that we hold each other accountable. And we live out our core values. Our staff needs to live and breathe the core values of the Solomon Foundation. All right? So how do I lead? Very quickly is first and foremost, I want to honor God in everything I do. And I'm telling you right now, that's hard to do. All right? But I do my best. And I try to improve. Secondly, my employees are my family. Okay? I'll tell you a couple of quick stories. It's about 5 years ago. I'm in the break room at our old office over in Meridian Park. One of our employees, Sarah Roberts, who's a senior vice president, she brings me a form. She says, will you sign my vacation request form? I go, sure. I signed it and I said to her, so what's going on? Where are you going? She goes, Luke and I are getting married. We're going to the Justice of Peace. We're just going to go get married. We're tired of all the hassles of planning a wedding and the family fights and all that stuff. We're just going to go get married at the Justice of the Peace. So, fine, I'm not going to get in this argument. And I go home and I tell my wife, and the next thing I know, my living room's being cleared out and chairs are being set up and I'm ordained. So guess what? We had a wedding in our house. True story. Okay? Brittany, raise your hand, Brittany. Brittany lived in Colorado Springs. We felt it was important to get her closer to our office, so we helped her sell her house and move to Denver, our Parker. And in that process, she had a 30-day window where she sold her house, but she couldn't close on her new house and move into it and all that stuff where she didn't have a place to live. Guess where her and her husband and daughter and her dog Penny are living? They're living in our basement, okay? And that's just two examples of who we are, okay? Any of my employees and any of the employees with each other, we get a phone call at 3 in the morning, we're going to be there, all right? Because we're family. It's important that you know our organization is family. I like to allow my team to spread their wings without allowing them to crash and burn. Okay? Here's the thing. Here's my philosophy in management. I would rather have you make a bad decision than no decision at all. Why? Because all of that snowballs and then there's a big problem. Okay? Jerry talked a little bit about that yesterday too. I want to try to lead by example. And that's hard. Okay? You know, that many people, I've learned over the years, many people told me that the higher up you are in the organization, the less you know. Okay, let me repeat that. The higher up in the organization you are, the less you know. Well, guess what? I want to get so close to my team and be a part of their lives that they can come and tell me anything, personally and professionally. Why? Because we got an organization we have to run. And we all have to do it together. I will never criticize somebody for making a wrong decision. I will criticize them for not making a decision at all. I want to be brutally honest in everything I do. Sometimes I'm too honest. Sometimes I'm too brutally honest. Okay? There's a difference. All right? Being a servant leader. We all know who was the greatest servant leader of all time? Jesus. All right? So we need to put ourselves at the same level as all of our team with an understanding that there is still somebody in charge. I did something several years ago when I was at CDF that shocked a lot of people. I walked into a staff meeting one morning and said, here's what we're going to do. I need somebody to draft a letter for me. I'm going to send a letter to all 15,000 investors, and they're all going to get my cell phone number and my home phone number. You can't do that. Are you insane? I said, no, I want to make sure every investor can reach me anytime they want, even if they want to call me at home. And we sent that letter out to 15,000 people. In about a 4-year period from the time I sent that out to the time I left CDF, do you know how many phone calls I got? 4. But you know how many people made the comment and said, thank you, I appreciate having your contact information. My life didn't change. It actually got better because of the respect level people had for me to do that. Okay? Now at the Solomon Foundation, I do print my cell phone number. I don't print my home number because I don't have one. Okay? Like most Americans, you don't have a home phone number anymore. But the bottom line is I want to make sure anyone can get to me anytime they want. And of course, most of the time when anybody reaches out to me, it's a problem, right? So it's best that it comes to me so that I can work through the organization with people. And I can tell you this, 90% of complaints are false. But if it starts with me, at least I can get to the bottom of it. Know your team both professionally and personally. We kind of talked about that. Serve your team. So building your mission statement and core values. It needs to be built from the ground up. It needs to be done from a staff and a board input level. And it's critical to the organization. All right? So many of you have heard me say this before. What is the biggest risk I have in making your church alone? Okay? Let me answer the question. Most of you know the answer. It has nothing to do with finances. The biggest risk I have in making a loan to your church, number one, is moral failure in the pulpit. I don't have to give you examples because you know them all. Okay? The second biggest risk I have is leadership meltdown. You know what that means? That means when the pastor thinks he's right and the elders think they're right, and there's this big blow up, and what happens to the church? The church implodes. Okay? Has nothing to do with finances. It has all to do about relationships. So the important thing is building up your core values and your mission statement so you can keep each other accountable on your staff. It needs to be from the heart, and it needs to be central to your organization. So when you look at our core values, every one of those 5 is central to the organization of the Solomon Foundation. Okay? Watch out for mission creep. This one here, I have to tell you, this one has me concerned for our churches today. Mainly the mainline denominations, because they're going to do anything they can do to keep people, including watering down what they believe. Help me with that. Okay? Let me give you the greatest example in the world of mission creep. In the late 1800s, there was an organization founded in Great Britain called the YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association. Great organization, even to this day. Is the YMCA different today than it was in 1920? Yeah. How about 1950? Yeah. How about 2000? How about today? Why? Because they let mission creep come in and destroy their organization from the standpoint of where it was when it started. All right? Still a great organization, but most people think the C no longer stands for Christianity. Why? Because the world has caused it to change its focus on its mission. All right? So I feel mission creep is a crisis that's facing all organizations today. Mostly what's happening in the church world. You know, as Don Wilson has always said, we're no longer the home team. Aren't we the visiting team in every town we live in today? So the bottom line is, we've got to make sure we do not let our mission and core values of our organizations creep. Okay? Because it just a little bit here. Take the YMCA. a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe a big one here. Maybe they went back a little bit and adopted some things. But ultimately, what happens? Huge, huge change in their organization. So here's a couple of things, and these are directly from the book Mission Drift. And if you haven't read it, it's a great read for your organizations and something I would encourage you to go through your staff with. Okay? Mission true organizations make hard decisions to protect the mission. Okay? Because the world is changing doesn't mean we have to. All right? Mission true leaders build in safeguards to protect the organization. So there isn't moral failure and there isn't leadership meltdown. Okay? I think one of the key things that's happening in our churches today is what's the role of the elders and what's the role of the senior pastor and the leadership team. Okay? You have to define that. You have to make sure this is what we're supposed to, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know the board knows what they're supposed to do. Okay? Does some of that conflict sometimes? Absolutely. But here's what we do. We talk about it. We can't let the organization drift. All right? Mission true organizations have clarity about their mission. I can guarantee you right now, the Solomon Foundation has clarity on what we do. All right? And it's not just me. It's all 32 employees. It's all 10 board members. Okay? Number 4, mission true board members understand their top priority. So you can change that for your church. Mission true elders understand their top priority. All right? I cannot tell you in the last 28 years the number of churches I've been in where there's been knockdown, drag-out fights between the senior pastor and the elders. And 90% of the time, what's it end up? It's destruction. So how do you keep your organization from getting to that point? Now, we're all human, right? But the bottom line is, everybody has to understand what their priorities are. All right? Number 5, mission true leaders set the cultural tone for the organization. We've kind of talked about that. Number 6, mission true organizations hire first for heart and character. Let me dive into that one. The vast majority of employees at the Solomon Foundation weren't well-versed or trained in their discipline that they were going to be working in, but they had character and they had heart. And so we brought them in, and what did we do? We trained them. We trained them in investments. We trained them in IRAs. We trained them in originating loans. We trained them in closing loans. We trained them in all the disciplines they needed to be trained in, because the first thing we wanted to make sure is we wanted to make sure their heart and character was right for what our organization needs to accomplish. I could have hired the best. I could have hired the top CPA person in the country, but no, I brought in Rebecca, because guess what? Her heart? No, she is the best. She is the best, and here's why. Here's why. Because she had the heart and the character to start. All right? She had all the titles. She had all the alphabet soup, right? But she didn't know much about church extension funds. But we brought her along, and she's the best of the best. Amen. Mission true organizations track metrics reflective of their full mission. Baptisms. We track them. Most of you that know this, that have loans with the Solomon Foundation, yeah, we need your financials every year. By the way, we want your attendance trends. But what else do we want? Baptisms. Why? What's baptism show?
Growth.
Growth. Okay? That's a key metrics for us. My buddies in the banking world think I'm crazy. All right? Hopefully you all don't think I'm crazy, but some of them do. But the bottom line is we want to track the metrics that reflect our full vision. Mission true leaders are fanatics about ritual and practices. We need to make sure policies and procedures are adhered to within our organization. And most organizations don't have those policies and procedures in place. And the organizations that are the worst when it comes to this area is the local church. Okay? I know we've got some sessions coming up later today, or today and tomorrow. They're going to help you with some of that. Because making sure you have good policies and procedures are important in today's workplace. Let me give you an example. In today's world, what you have to remember, and I'm sure you're going to hear this from a couple of our presenters, if you're the employer, you're at the disadvantage in any courtroom in America. 90% of jurors, 90% of judges are always going to side with the employee. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. That's just the way things work in the world today. All right? So if you don't have the right policies and procedures, you're setting yourself up for failure, even though you're not doing anything wrong. Okay? So that's why it's important to make sure you have all of that. Bottom line is stay true to your mission and hold yourself accountable in today's world. That's hard. That's easy to say and hard to do. But I think that's going to be the big difference in moving our churches forward, is making sure we don't have mission drift within our organizations. And many of you, or all of you that are in leadership roles, either on the financial side or the executive pastor side, you're the ones that can make a difference in this area. Okay? So 5 key responsibilities. I want to kind of close with this. I want to share with you what I think my 5 responsibilities are to the organization that I serve. Number 1, I have to own the vision. So you as leaders in your organization, you need to own that vision that you cast. Okay, it's not just the senior pastor. Okay? I think it's the leadership team. So at the Solomon Foundation, our leadership team owns the vision of the organization. And oh, by the way, let me share this with you, because the independent Christian church, Restoration Movement Christian Church, in my opinion, is male dominant. Would you all agree? Huh? It's not negative, that's just a fact. What you need to know about the Solomon Foundation is 3 of the 5 members of the leadership team are female. Okay? Bill and I are outnumbered. But the bottom line is, those are the people that have the ability to lead the organization. We're going to put them up there. All right? Own the vision. Number 2 is provide your team with the proper resources. If I'm not providing my team with the proper resources, they can't do their job. So I'm always trying to find ways to take the advice of my team members on how we can improve that. All right? Number 3, continue to build on the culture of the organization. All right? And mainly in our organization, we're bringing in so many new people right now that we need to instill the culture of the Solomon Foundation and our core values. Number 4 is to make good decisions. My job is to make good decisions. Now, am I going to make bad decisions? Absolutely. My goal is to mitigate the number of bad decisions I make and multiply the number of good decisions I make. All right? Hopefully the bad decisions I make are small ones. All right? But you need to put yourself in a position. It's like in our organization, you know, we've never had a foreclosure. Okay? Now, we don't go out and brag, Solomon Foundation's never had a foreclosure, because guess what? The minute you do that, guess what you're going to have? You're going to have one. I've been there at CDF. You know, I kept telling our staff, Don't say that. All right? And number 5, deliver performance. Got to deliver performance. Okay? Got to deliver performance. You know, when I'm at a Solomon Foundation board meeting, I have to deliver performance. They want to see what the key metrics are. They want to see what the financials look like. They want to see how the loan portfolio is performing. I have to perform. My team has to perform. Knowing that, yes, we're going to make mistakes. Okay? So as a leader, how can I improve? Really quickly, I'm going to run through these because I'm out of time. Learn from experience, continue to grow in your knowledge, read and write. This is a tough one for me. Okay? Now, the positive thing for us is when we acquired the Christian Standard and now we have to write sponsored content, we have to write 4 pages of content every month to the Christian Standard. Now, that might sound easy. It's not. Okay? So we've had to challenge ourselves to write more and get involved more in writing articles about what's happening in our movement. And reading. Okay? My wife will tell you in my office at home, I've got a little credenza there, and there's probably 30 books sitting there. Okay? I try to get through them, but the bottom line is I need to make sure I can read and write more. Meet with wise people, teach, study yourself, gather feedback, seek out mentors, and apply your knowledge. So I'm going to open it up to a few questions. I think I've got... Bill's got a mic? Yeah, okay.